Today, we are talking about the upcoming November elections in Virginia with J. Miles Coleman, the associate editor of Sabato's Crystal Ball out of the UVA Center for Politics. This election, all 140 seats in the General Assembly will be on the ballot. There's 100 seats in the House, 40 in the Senate. It will be the first time since 2021 that the House has been on the ballot, and the first time since 2019 that the Senate has been on the ballot. And going into this election, Republicans have control of the House and Democrats have control of the Senate. Jay Miles, thank you for taking time to talk with me today.
Sure. Thank you for having me. Always good.
The first question I wanted to ask you is overall, what do Virginians need to know about this upcoming election?
So, yeah, it is, we are already into the early voting period. It's ever since the sort of Democrats took over in 2019, one of the things they did was expand early voting. So now they give you 40 days ahead of each primary and general election to go vote early. As like a Catholic, one thing I joke is, they basically give you the whole season of Lent to go early vote. It's 40 days, so you have no excuse not to go cast the ballot. One thing more on the administrative front, like that, is very, very starting last year. They now do same day registration. From what I understand, I didn't do this myself, but if you go to your precinct same day, you can register. I think your vote will be counted as a provisional ballot, but it will be counted. So that's something I'd say, just to kind of get that out of the way as well. So, yeah, I mean, I would say overall, this is basically Governor Youngkin's midterm, right? Governor Youngkin has been, in contrast to some other Republican governors across the country, like a Brian Kemp in Georgia or Ron DeSantis in Florida, who have really passed some, sweeping conservative legislation in their states. Youngkin has been stymied a little by, one of the state's senators in the and sort of the Hampton Roads area, Senator Lois Lucas, who leads the Democrats who control the state Senate. She said that we are his brick wall, and that's what they've been kind of priding themselves on. So Youngkin would very much like to get both chambers of the legislature. One of the sort of subplots here is he has often been mentioned as a presidential candidate. I think it's getting a bit late in the game now for 2024, but down the line, if he wants to maybe get onto the national stage, he's going to be, he's going to want to say, okay, well, these are the conservative policies I did in Virginia. This is why I need to be the Republican nominee for president or anything else. But he's not going to be able to do that unless he has both chambers of the legislature. So it's definitely Youngkin is not on the ballot himself, but he has a lot invested in these elections. And I think we've basically seen that throughout this whole campaign season. He's been out a lot campaigning for his candidates. Really, when he was elected in 2021 himself, I know he did very well in the Virginia Beach, Hampton Roads area. And he's hoping that the Republicans have that same type of success in the area this time around, too.
It seems like there's three scenarios in this election. It could either be status quo, where it's a split control. It could be Democrats take the General Assembly or Republicans take full control. What would you envision in all three scenarios? Like if the status quo remained, if Republicans did end up getting full control, and if Democrats got full control?
Yeah, well, I'll start with maybe the best case scenario for the Democrats is that, they is that they take both chambers of the legislature. Now, one thing we talk a lot about at the Crystal Ball is that there's an increasing correlation between presidential voting and down ballot voting, what we call. Where I'm going with that is Joe Biden, if you just look at his performance in the state Senate districts and the state House districts, he would have carried a pretty comfortable majority of both chambers. So Democrats are hoping, in terms of an electoral performance, that they can match Joe Biden's numbers as close as they can. But talking to a lot of Democratic candidates, really when it comes to some of their big ticket priorities, when it comes things like education spending or infrastructure spending, they'll say, well, we're really not going to be able to do a lot of this until the next Democratic governor comes along, because even if Democrats get both chambers of the legislature, they're probably not going to be able to override Youngkin's vetoes. So it's I would say to a large extent that the Democrats are really fighting a defensive battle. They don't want Virginia to start looking more like, say, Florida or Texas, which would be the case if the Republicans get control. That said, maybe they could win smaller victories. It was earlier this year, it took the governor and the legislature a while to work out the state budget, right? So if the Democrats controlled both chambers of the legislature, then they would perhaps have more leverage in those types of negotiations. If it's a status quo election, it's basically sort of like we have now, almost gridlock, just like how things are in Washington D.C. So it's not as much to say on that front. We could have more situations where it takes longer than expected to write a budget or come to agreements. And the third scenario is, well, if Republicans take both chambers of the legislature, then Governor Youngkin will, he'll very much like that. One thing that they've talked about, that Youngkin has talked about, and that's also been a key issue in this campaign, has been abortion. Governor Youngkin has framed a 15-week ban as sort of a reasonable position. And a lot of Democrats have been saying, okay, well, that's what you say now, but if Republicans have what we call the trifecta, which is the governorship in both chambers of the legislature, maybe Republicans will go even further if they're able to. Under full Republican control, Youngkin may be able to pass more tax cuts. That's something he's talked a lot about. Maybe the Republicans would loosen up gun laws, or I talked earlier about how the Democrats, when they had the trifecta in 2019, they loosened up voting. Well, the Republicans, when they've been in charge of states across the rest of the South, that's something that the Republicans have targeted. So I would say it goes back to, if the Republicans are in full control, then in terms of our legislative and political agenda in Virginia, we may start looking more like a Florida or a Texas.
I wanted to ask why abortion has become such a significant issue in this upcoming election.
Yeah, so it's really last year when Roe v. Wade was overturned, that did not ban abortion. That made it into a state-by-state issue. So in the South, most of the states are fairly conservative. They have Republican legislatures. So the result of that was in Virginia, we're really the last state in the South with relatively loose abortion laws. That is the issue of abortion really helped Democrats in the 2022 elections. It was kind of odd because you think that the Republicans have that they were trying to overturn Roe for about 50 years. You'd have thought that they would have had a better response to when it actually happened. You had some Republicans like Senator Lindsey Graham saying, okay, we need a national ban. If we take over, we're going to have a vote on this. Where you had some Republicans saying, oh, no, this should be a state issue. So I think the Republicans at the national level were sort of caught flat-footed on that. And it was an issue that really helped Democrats uh, to sort of beat the odds in their midterm last year. We saw that at the congressional level here in Virginia. That was, even though Elaine Luria lost, it's something her campaign brought up often, and that was something that helped Abigail Spanberg up in Northern Virginia. Her opponent had had some very unartful words or inartful words to say about abortion. So ever since then, it's been an issue that's really sort of fired up Democrats. And you get a one angle that I've noticed that the Virginia Republicans have been talking about recently in their messaging is, okay, well, it's actually the Democrats who are the extreme ones because, they are for abortion with no limits. Our 15-week ban is reasonable. Well, that's something that they tried to do at the national level last year, too, in a lot of key Senate races across the country. And I think the results were a bit wanting. It is. Yeah, I know it's hard to say on the abortion issue that, at least from a purely political, optical perspective, it's hard to say that your opponents are the extremists when, your own party is, okay, well, there are young girls being forced to carry these babies to term, and your party is the one that facilitated that, right? So it is. So I've noticed Republicans are sort of raising the salience of the abortion issue in Virginia, which I'm very interested to see how that's going to play.
We've had several elections since Roe v. Wade was overturned. I think last year Kansas put it on the ballot as a referendum. How would you say Virginia's upcoming election compares to those elections where abortion was cornerstone and new abortion restrictions were rejected?
Yes, that's a very good point. And in fact, I did an article a few weeks ago where I looked at that question. And since Roe v. Wade fell, there have been 7 states that have had abortion-related referendums. These states range from blue states like Vermont and California to states as Republican leaning as Kentucky and Montana. The pro-choice side, or at least the pro-abortion rights side, has won in all 7 of those referendums. This was most recently the case in Ohio, a state that pretty comfortably backed Donald Trump both times. So if the Democrats overperform in these upcoming Virginia elections, I think that's going to probably be a key ingredient. Though we're going back a little on Youngkin, yes, it was impressive that he was able to win in a state that Joe Biden won by 10 points the year earlier. But I really do wonder if Youngkin was on the ballot in 2022, would he have been as successful? Back during the 2021 campaign, there was a Texas abortion case that was going to the Supreme Court, and a big kind of slogan of the Virginia Democrats that year was "Don't Texas my Virginia." which as on sort of a historical side note, I found that a little ironic because a lot of the founding fathers of Texas were native Virginians. So anyway, but I think with the whole "Don't Texas My Virginia" thing, that was still a little abstract. That was a Texas thing. Now it's the reality. So I think voters respond differently to reality than they do to hypotheticals. But it's I'm not sure Youngkin would have been able to win after it was over at turn, considering he only beat McAuliffe by 1 or 2 points.
On the other side, we've seen Youngkin really emphasize this theme of parents matter. He's doing a tour around Virginia, talking to people about these issues, parental rights, largely in relation to education. We've seen new transgender model policies. We've seen revisions of the state curriculum when it comes to history. How significant of a role would you say those issues are going to play in this election?
Yeah, to me, the whole parents' rights thing is more of a issue that rallies up the Republican base. I mean, if you look at basically any Republican who's running in a competitive district, if you go to their website, they'll say something, right smack dab on their website. They'll say something to the effect of, we need to empower parents, or I'm for parents' rights. Whereas the Democrats will often talk more generally about how we need to fund schools, or make sure Virginia is a leader in education. So to me, that's sort of an issue that really helps them with the Republican-based voters. Youngkin, I think, was very fortunate in 2021 that he had a handmade gap from Terry McAuliffe on that issue. I don't think parents should be telling schools what they said, what they should teach, and he sort of wrote that to kind of own the education issue in 2021. This time I'm not so sure. In the absence of that type of a concrete gap, I'm not as sure. So but it is one of those things that the Republicans, I think Youngkin gave them this playbook in 2021, and they're still trying to borrow from it to some extent.
When it comes to specific races, which races are you monitoring for the House and the Senate that could determine party control of each chamber?
Sure. So again, I'd be very surprised if control of either chamber doesn't come down to, just a few seats. I talked earlier about how Joe Biden won a pretty comfortable majority of seats in both chambers, but I almost think like his numbers are like the ceiling. It's going to be hard for Democrats to replicate his numbers everywhere. But I would say, in terms of the state Senate, I would say Senate District 17, which sort of takes in parts of the Hampton Roads area, goes a bit into South Side as well. Jenkins, the Democrat, Brewer, the Republican. That's going to be a very kind of key seat. And why I'm watching that seat is what the Democrats struggled with in 2021, and I think some of their other successes in 2022 may have papered over this fact. Was that minority turnout was not that great, especially in parts of Virginia and the rest of the South. I think Senate District 17 has a 35 to 40% Black population, so that's something where you would really notice it. kind of on the other end of the Commonwealth, Senate District 31 up in Loudoun County. That's one that is probably going to be the most expensive uh, race. And one other Senate district. I could stay here for much longer, but I'll keep it to kind of three. Is sort of coming back to the Hampton Roads area, out on the peninsula with Senator Monty Mason. He has a decent challenger in former York County Sheriff Danny Diggs. We've been told that that district could be decided by double digits, and we're not talking about percentage margins. We're talking about actual votes. So that's definitely one I would watch as well. In the House, most of the key districts are going to be in the suburbs. I think in stores, kind of keeping it local to the Hampton Roads area. I think districts 84, 89, kind of east of the Hampton Roads area are going to be competitive. This is 84 is Clark Dillinger. 89 is Jenkins and Ennis, I think. And 97, which is right smack dab in the middle of Virginia Beach. Fagans and I think it's Greenhalghs are Republicans. So that's how. So basically, point being, there's a lot of stuff in the Virginia Beach area to watch.
What do Republicans need to do to be victorious in this election, and same for Democrats?
Yeah, so I would say, I would say that the Republicans basically need to match Youngkin's performance as much as they can. There were a number of those key districts that we just talked about that voted for Biden in 2020 and then flipped over to Glenn Youngkin in 2021. I think all of those dead districts I mentioned may have been in that category. But the Republicans, if they're running in districts that, say Joe Biden carried, they would very much want to keep the issues as local as they can. Because some of these issues, or some of these districts, if they normally lean Democratic, then the Republicans are going to want to, not have the voters look at Washington D.C., but look at what at what local issues are affecting those types of communities. I think if Republicans end up beating expectations, I would chalk a lot of it up to Youngkin and his push to early vote. I think the jury is still out in terms of whether or not the Republican rank and file voters are going to go that route, but we'll see. And I would definitely say that one of the things that the Republicans have maybe already done, is which may work in their favor, is Youngkin and his organization has really emphasized that, in contrast to, stepping back a bit to the primaries back in June, where one of the other big subplots of this election was the kind of infighting primaries on the Democratic side. Youngkin, in all 10 primaries that he made an endorsement in, he got his candidates. So he really says that, in most of the key districts, we're at least, we got the Republican candidates that we think can win. So I think if they end up beating expectations, the idea of kind of candidate recruitment may work in the Republicans' favor. On the Democratic side, I talked earlier, they really, one of the, especially since the Trump era, One of the key demographics that has moved in the Democratic direction is college-educated white voters. These would be in a lot of the suburbs, like Loudoun County or Henrico County, or even of Virginia Beach as well. The Democrats need to kind of hold the gains that they've made with that demographic. This would be, it was kind of funny that as much as the governor talks about Loudoun County, especially when it relates to parents' rights, that used to be pretty marginal county. But when he was on the ballot himself, he lost it by 10, 11 points. So those are the groups of voters that the Democrats are going to need to hold on to. One of the districts that I did not mention for the state Senate was District 16 with Senator Donovan. That is a seat that basically in the Short Pump area, that is basically a must-win seat for Democrats. And they have that kind of district has a large college-educated white population. Toward the other end of that, especially more in the Hampton Roads area, is they're going to need to find a way to get minority turnout. So they really need to show that demographic that, okay, this is why you need to vote for us, make more of an effort. Overall, I would say, I think, yes, the abortion issue is important. It is one of the issues driving the whole election. But I think the Democrats, they can't sound like a one note. That can't be seen as their only issue. I think in 2021, one of the issues that helped Youngkin was that Terry McAuliffe would not stop talking about Trump. It seems like, okay, that's interesting, but what are you going to do for Virginians? So I just think that the Democrats need to be seen as having solutions for all of the issues, not just one. Probably should have said this in terms of what the Republicans need to do well, but yes, I mean, definitely the economy is something that everyone feels. So basically that's one area where they would really want to focus on national politics instead of local politics, for sure.